Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Library of the Weird. I hope you're doing fine. We have 20 degrees outside today. It's the weekend. It's really, really nice, and I hope it's also nice wherever you are. But I want to talk to you about a book again, and this is Lovecraft Country by Ruff. This horror book was written in 2016. Since then, it's been adapted to a TV show by HBO. It was made by Misha Green, by J.J. Abrams, and Jordan Peele, who is one of the biggest names in modern horror movie circles. I haven't seen it yet. I only recently read this book, and you might ask, why are you talking to us about a book written in 2016, which basically everyone knows? I believe in February or in March, a second book came out called The Destroyer of Worlds, and I had this one lying on my TBR for a long time, and I thought, okay, now the second book came out and I really have to read this now. And I very much liked it, and that's why I want to talk to you about it. So this book was published by HarperCollins. It's about 400 pages long, at least in this version. It has great cover art. The cover was made by Jared Taylor. I don't know if you can really see this. You have like some kind of chapel on the cover, which stands on a hill that kind of turns into tentacles, and we have like these ghost-like or maybe KKK-like people on the cover, and it really fits the narrative of the novel. The book features 8 different, I call them episodes, not chapters, because each of them features a different POV. The first one of these is Atticus Turner, who was a soldier in Korea. He's now working in Florida, and he's coming back to Chicago because he got a weird letter for his father, and his father is kind of missing, and he goes on to find him. Right at the beginning of the book, in the beginning of the episode of Atticus Turner, we find out the theme with which the whole novel is concerned, basically. On his way to Chicago, Atticus is pulled over by a state trooper, and his car is searched. He has to answer all kinds of questions just because it's black, and we're living, this book is set in a very, very racist Jim Crow America. He also tells the story of how his car blew a tire and he had to find a garage where he as a black person was allowed to enter, and that people would change his tire for him. And each of these episodes is concerned with the matters of racism at that time. So it's not only a horror novel, talks a lot about the experience of black people in 1950s America. Back in Chicago, Atticus meets up with other members of his family, and they finally find out where his father has gone. He seems to be searching for the ancestors of his wife, of Atticus' mother. And what's a bit funny is that Atticus has a letter from his father, I think, where he says he's in Arkham, or Atticus reads this as Arkham, and he tells, and he goes to one of the members of his family and says like, "Oh, father is in Lovecraft Country." I believe it's his uncle. He laughs a bit and says, "No, Atticus, it's not Arkham, it's Artham." which also he says could be Lovecraft Country because it's a very, very racist part of the US. But Atticus, with two other members of his family, his uncle and his aunt, I believe, goes to find his father. They're going to art him, and they're invited to a huge mansion, or a villa of some sort. And this villa belongs to Mr. Braithwaite, who is a very mysterious figure. But in the villa, there's only the butler, who says he doesn't know why this rich white man has invited you all. But Atticus also meets the son of Mr. Braithwaite, Caleb Braithwaite, who tells him some things. They finally find Atticus' father chained in a cellar, but they can free him. But when they try to flee, they are held up by Caleb, who uses some kind of mysterious powers to stop them. But he says, like, I need your help. My father wants you to be part of a ritual he wants to perform with members of some kind of brotherhood who call themselves alchemists, I think, magicians. They want to summon something from another dimension or stuff like that. And Caleb helps Atticus sabotage this ritual, and this is where the real story begins. As you may have noticed, this book is called Lovecraft Country, and right in the first episode of this book, there's a huge Lovecraftian influence. Atticus is a big fan of H.P. Lovecraft. Maybe at this point I should make a quick introduction to H.P. Lovecraft in case you don't know who he was. H.P. Lovecraft was an American horror writer who's mostly known for his weird cosmic horror stories. He basically invented the genre. Most of you probably know Cthulhu, this kind of squid, octopus, elder god, kraken, elder god. I don't know. He lived at the beginning of the 20th century. He died in 37, 38, something like that. But what is also pretty important to know about H.P. Lovecraft is that he was a huge racist, and he was way more racist than other people at the time he was living in. And I don't want to get too much into that because I want to do a video on that sometime in the future. We see when I get to that. Yeah, and this is basically why this book is called Lovecraft Country. We have the horror themes, but we also have the huge theme of racism in this book. And throughout each of these episodes, we have both of these themes. We have a lot of horror. We have cosmic horror. We have body horror. We have kind of weird horror, but there's also always racism involved. Most of the time, not some kind of elder beings or horror beings are the monsters in this book. Most of the time, the white people are the monsters. There's also an episode about Montrose's father, who lived through the Tulsa riots, where a lot of black people were massacred. So there's a lot of references to real life events and real life things, actually. Atticus uses I think it's called the Green Book or Blue Book, the safe travel guide for Negroes, which was also a real thing, where black people could find hotels or services where they wouldn't be refused. And it's just crazy to me, as someone who grew up in the late 20th and the 21st century, that, I mean, racism is still a thing, and I, as a white person, don't really experience that. And I mean, I don't know, I've never been to the US, but from what I see in media or I know from people, is that racism is a it's still a huge problem in the US. It's a huge problem here as well. I don't think it's as crazy as it is in the US, but to think that only a few decades ago there were laws in place that made black people with lesser rights, like some kind of lesser people. And this is something who grew up in Germany, who had German history teach to him. I think I know a lot about people viewing others as subhuman. And to think that a country who has liberated the concentration camps in Europe, that this country had laws in place that made people of other races lesser human, even into the 1950s or 1960s, and still has huge problems with racism. It's just so crazy to me. And this is probably one of the reasons I like this book a lot. I don't know that much about the history of racism in the US. I mean, I think I know quite a lot, or I know the most important things, but I was not educated in the US. So I hope you don't mind that too much. But back to the book, there were a lot of references to H.P. Lovecraft, and one of my favorites I just want to read to you aloud. This is an episode where Caleb Braithwaite goes to members of Atticus' family because he wants to have a book, and he has something in his possessions that the Turner family wants, and for that he wants this book, and they have to find it. He doesn't really know where it is. It is supposed to be in a library in Chicago, and it's called the Book of Names. And when he hears the name, Atticus, who is a big fan of H.P. Lovecraft, instantly thinks about the Necronomicon, and another guy also thinks about that and is like, what? It sounds like the Necronomicon. And then there's this conversation. The Necronomicon, said Pirate Joe. What's that? A book of black magic, Mortimer said enthusiastically, written by the mad Arab Abdul al-Hazred. The stuttering Arab, more like, said Abdullah. It's Abd al, not Abdul. Abd means servant, and al is the. So Abd al-Hazred would be servant of the Hazred. Pirate Joe blinked his eye. What's a Hazred? A white guy from Rhode Island trying to be funny, said Montrose. And I laughed aloud by that because I found it so funny. H.P. Lovecraft was a very, very educated person. If you read stories like At the Mountains of Madness, you find out that he knew a lot about geology, for example. And to think that while he was such an educated man, he still made mistakes like that when it came, for example, to Arab people. It's just, I find it just very funny, and there's a lot of references like that in this book. One last thing I want to mention is while all these characters in here are black. The book is a lot about the black experience in 1950s America. The writer, Matt Ruff, is white. And I read up on this because I wanted to find out what is the general opinion. Can a white man write a book like that? Is that even okay? And it seems like it is. There were a lot of Reddit posts where black people said they wouldn't have noticed, they would have thought that the author of the book was black, and they're completely fine with it. Matt Ruff himself said in an interview when he went to college, he had a good black friend, and he liked to go out into the woods to unwind and just go anywhere where he liked. And he said to his black friend, "You should try it too. It's really good for your brain. It's really good to unwind." And his friend said, "Dude, I'm black. If I go strolling around in the forest, I won't make it to graduation." And I think this is a very powerful response, and this is what triggered Matt Ruff to write a book like that. And I think he succeeded pretty well in writing about the experience. I learned a lot. I Googled a lot because I wanted to find out more about things that were mentioned in this book. So all in all, I really enjoyed this book. It is a bit of a slow burner though, so don't expect too much action. It's way more concerned with the themes of racism. Another big theme I haven't talked about that much is family, because all of the POVs are of people belonging to kind of the same family, and their interactions are also pretty important. You don't have to have read a lot of Lovecraft to understand much of this. Some of the jokes maybe, or some of the references will get over your head, but I don't think that you will enjoy the book less because of that. So I think I've rambled on long enough. I hope it was kind of coherent. I hope you liked the review. Have you read this book? Have you seen the TV show? Do you want to read the next novel, The Destroyer of Worlds? Let me know your thoughts, your opinions. And with that, I'm going to wish you a nice weekend, a nice day. I hope it's nice wherever you are. And see you next week. Goodbye.